I'm shooting coach Mike Dunn, and welcome to How to Shoot a Basketball. Today on How to Shoot a Basketball, it's going to be all about balance. And we're going to try to keep this as simple as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce this concept of balance just like I introduce it to coaches I work with or even younger players that I work with, so we can get a really good idea of what it actually means to be balanced and why it is so important, right? So I remember as a kid being balanced, told to bend my knees, drop down, and then get on the balls of my feet, right? I was told that was real, true balance, right? As I've gone on to teach shooting, I've found that that's actually not the case. And there's a lot more to it than just dropping or bending your knees and getting in an athletic position and then having all the weight on the balls of our feet. It has to do with what we're doing with our upper body, but there's a huge part of it that has to do with how our feet connect to the floor and how we actually get to a point where our knees are bent, right? So just bending our knees doesn't really put us in an athletic or balanced position. If I'm from the side here, straight up and down, I can feel super balanced right now being straight up and down. My chest is up and I can almost feel a sense of weightlessness in this position, right? If you just stand there and you try to feel as weightless as possible, balancing the weight between the arches of your feet, you can feel pretty good, right? We're not leaning to the left or we're not leaning to the right. But if I were to now think about just bending my knees, all of my weight is going to shift to the front. I'm going to be very quad heavy, and this doesn't put me in an athletic position. If I was asked to jump high from this position, it'd be extremely difficult to do. If I had a bar on my back and I was trying to squat weight, this would not be the way to do it, right? We want to be able to engage the core, engage our lower half, and really be balanced in a way that's going to allow us to take care of all the good stuff that we're going to start doing from the waist up, right? So when we're in this position, right, our first move is not to get balanced by just bending our knees, right? That right there is not the answer to our balance problems. The answer to our balance problems is keeping full foot connected to the ground. We are going to drop our butt back. You can almost pretend there's like a stool in back of you, right? And then that stool, you're just trying to rest your butt on the edge of that stool. And what's going to happen, and you drop your butt back, you can take your weight, how it's here vertically, and you can just sit it straight back, right? And now I'm in a position where my chest is up, my chin is up, my eyes are up, I have my weight straight down. I took my weight from high, a nice vertical drop. Big shout out to Rob Foder. And now I'm in a nice, strong, athletic position, okay? This is ultimately what we want to do. I had a subscriber tell me the other day when we were talking about balance and actually connecting to the ground. He said, Mike, you know why it's so important? I said, Peyton, why is it so important? He said, because you can't shoot a cannon out of a canoe. And I thought it was such a great phrase to use here. We want to be as stable and connected to this ground as possible, because if I'm just on my toes, you're going to see here in a second how I actually can cause more movement than I necessarily would like to, okay? Also, just before I get started and kind of show you how we start to implement the ball in this situation, when I say drop full foot to the ground, in a stationary setting, this is going to be pretty easy. It's not hard for me to drop my hips back and keep my foot fully connected to the ground, okay? But in more dynamic situations, it may be a bit difficult, and that's when we're just going to try to get as much of our foot down as possible. Always when we're getting into our athletic position, dropping our butt back. If you can't get full foot down, could be a flexibility issue, a mobility issue in the ankles, or it could just be something that you're not necessarily used to, or maybe don't even need at this point, considering how strong you are through your hips and your core. But the more foot we can get down, the more connection, the more solid we're going to be. So when I add the basketball here, okay, now we're going to talk about how this ball kind of goes hand in hand with us being able to create balance, how we move it. We'll get more into that in further episodes. But if I have this ball in what we call our one position high, right? I'm here in this nice position, and now I drop down this way. Now what I'm going to try to do, because I want to try to move this ball in as straight of a path as possible. Now, we're not robots, and moving the ball in a complete straight path isn't really possible either. But in order to be able to move this ball as efficiently as I can from my starting point to our two position or to our set point, right? I want to get there, in my mind, in a straight line, right? I know what a straight line looks like, so I'm going to try to get it there. If I don't have my feet fully connected to the ground, right? Even if I move the ball just like this, but I'm just on my toes. What tends to happen is as we start to move the ball up, you'll see my hips come forward, my weight shifts, and it often ends up in kind of disrupting the ball path that we would normally take. There's going to be more movement backwards than we really want. So what we want to be able to do is when we drop our hips back and we have that solid foundation, we should be able to independently move this basketball up our body without the body having to react in any type of way. If I start to move this ball and it causes my knees to shift forward, then we know we are dealing with some type of balance problem, okay? Now, when it comes to the upper body, our posture is extremely important in our balance too. I'm not gonna get in this position, drop my butt back, and have my chest to the ground, because now the first thing that's going to happen is I'm going to have to pull backwards, right? If I pull backwards, that means my momentum's going behind me, but the target is in front of me. I want to be able to create as much power as possible going towards the target, right? We don't want anything taking away. This is where when we drop, it's important that we try to keep chest up. Now, I'm not going to be flat like this, like a wall, but chest up, you'll see a slight bend here, chin up, eyes up, and that's putting me in position to take all my weight, drop vertical, and now be able to move that ball up my body without there having to be any adjustment, any pull backwards, right? So we don't want to be too forward. We don't want to be too straight or too up and down this way either, because that's going to put all the weight in our heels. Weight is evenly distributed between our arches. I drop my butt, chest up, chin up, eyes up. I'm now in position to move that ball up the body without my lower half compromising anything. Because at the end of the day, you can't shoot a cannon out of a canoe. Keep shooting.